Now, HMRC are investigating more than 2,000 families who apparently haven't paid enough inheritance tax.
Yes, between April and November 2023, the taxman has taken around £172 million in unpaid death levies.
Well, it begs the question whether it's time for the government to abolish it altogether or perhaps to hammer down even harder.
OK, well, to debate this morning, we're joined by Head of Campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, Elliot Keck, and political consultant Emma Burnell. Very good to see you this morning. Emma, let's start with you. Is it time that we ban inheritance tax?
No, it's an absolute nonsense. What other crime that people commit do we respond to by going, oh, well, maybe we'll just make it not a crime then, it's fine, you're all right. If people aren't paying their taxes, they're committing a crime. And by committing a crime, we don't respond to that by softly measures. And nowhere else on this channel have I seen that response to any other crime.
Elliot, go on, respond to that. I mean, that's blown me away slightly. What do you think, Elliot?
Yeah, I don't quite follow that line of argument. By that line of argument, you could never cut any tax. I think the broader picture is one that inheritance tax is two things, really. It's a tax on death and it's a tax on misfortune. If you give all your wealth away to your children, let's say, and then you die 8 years later, none of it will be subject to tax. But if you do it all 7 years before you die, i.e., based on pure misfortune, then you will have to pay, or rather the people that inherit your wealth will have to pay often a significant amount of tax. And that means often rearranging family estates, houses, whatever it is, in quite rapid movement, and having to then sell off those potentially major family properties in order to pay often very, very large bills to the taxman. And the thing is it hits those actually who are just over the threshold. Those who are the super, super rich are able to afford the tax advisors to rearrange their wealth in ways that can take advantage of the many exemptions. And it actually hits those that are just over the threshold, i.e. the squeezed middle.
I mean, it's the bottom line, Emma, on this, once again, isn't it? It's a death tax. Why should people pay tax on their income, which has been taxed multiple times already? It does seem, and a lot of people in this country, even if they wouldn't have to pay it themselves, think it is inherently unfair.
People think all taxes are unfair, but they also want decent public services. If we're going to have decent public services, some tax has to be paid from some places in order to pay for them. Would you rather pay those taxes while you're alive, or would you rather pay them after you've finished using your own money? Honestly, most people would probably rather pay it when it's not actually hitting themselves. In terms of the family estates, you get the first 300 and I think it's 25,000 pounds tax-free. If it's going directly, if your will is leaving things directly to your family, that raises to £500,000. We're talking about the estates of the top 4% in the country. We're not talking about you or me. And equally, the one thing Elliot is right about is that there are rich people who are abusing loopholes to get away with this. That's what should be banned, not the tax itself.
Elliot?
Well, I'd certainly agree that abandoning the loopholes, closing those loopholes and then raising the overall threshold would be preferable to the situation we have at the moment. But actually, the much better solution is simply to scrap inheritance tax. It doesn't actually raise that much money, £7 billion out of a total roughly £1 trillion of government receipts. It makes up about 1,000 pages of about an 11,000-page tax code. It's incredibly complicated. It doesn't raise much, and it hits those that are often grieving. We talk about 4% of estates. That's actually rapidly growing. Of course, 4% of estates actually affects far more people than 4%. That's the spouse of the person that died, the children, the nephews, the nieces, the friends that may all be part of that overall inheritance. So it affects far more than just the 4% of people that die. And of course, that is significantly growing.
You'd change your mind, Emma, if you had to pay it, wouldn't you?
No, I probably will have to pay it because my parents own a reasonable property in London. I will absolutely pay my taxes happily. As J.K. Rowling has said, taxes are the price we pay for living in a decent society. I'm aware of the desperate state of our public services, and I think they should be well funded. And frankly, this is the most fair way of funding it. Taxing people...
Can I just jump in, because you raised an interesting point in that you said a second ago it only affects 4% of people, so it doesn't affect any of us. And then you've gone to say, well, actually, I probably will have to pay it.
Well, yeah,
which just goes to show it is affecting more and more ordinary people. This is the problem.
Very lucky, so it won't affect. I don't have any children or dependents. I will never have the kind of money that would get taxed. So it won't affect me in that I won't be the dead person that Elliot is very emotively talking about. It will probably affect my parents, who will then display they've got a house in Chingford. It's a lovely house. It's probably will just go up. We're going to be those people just over the threshold, and all of us are okay with that. And then when that money's dispersed between the three of us, we won't then have enough to be taxed ourselves.
I think we should be clear here that it's not the dead person that pays the tax, it's the person that inherits the wealth. So let's say you inherit a house from your father, maybe it's worth £600,000, not a huge property in London nowadays. Actually, that's a relatively normal property in London. If that's £600,000, you're suddenly having to pay about £40,000 to the taxman for that. That means that unless you're able to pay that £40,000 effectively in cash, you're going to have to sell that house, and you're going to have to sell that house relatively quickly to ensure that you're not one of the people that HMRC comes after.
I'm afraid we are out of time. Emma Burnell, thank you very much. Elliot Keck and Emma Burnell.